right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the Good Body Podcast. I am so excited about today's guest, very special guest. Her name is Baily Browder, and she is a published author, a wellness author. And the work you have created, I just think is so needed in this world right now. And I love your target audience.
Thank you.
Yes. So let's go ahead and bring the book up. Been there, done that. A Girl's Guide to Puberty, Hormones, and Loving Yourself Through It All. Talk about a book that is needed. So we're going to talk to Baily about her personal story, her health journey, and what led to the creation of Been There, Done That.
Awesome.
So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So what's interesting is Baily started as a client of mine for acupuncture.
Yep.
It's probably been, like a year and a half or so ago?
It's been like 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
Probably 2 years. So I've had the chance to sort of witness Baily in her health awakening, her health journey, kind of get to see her on a monthly maintenance basis. And I've had this lovely sort of, back row view to the process of how this book came to be. And what's so incredible about you is you kind of had this awakening, realized there is a fundamental problem with the system, and you did something about it. Yeah. And it's so incredible and so inspiring.
Thank you.
And it takes a lot of courage. I mean, there was a career change. I mean, all kinds of things.
Lots of change.
And I can't wait for you to speak to this. But if you are working on a passion project in your life, whether it's related to wellness or not, I think this is a fun podcast because in a matter of 2 years, this woman has completely changed her life and is diving into her passion. So maybe let's start a little bit with, the why behind it, or maybe you want to start with a little bit about your health journey and how women's health, taking care of ourselves and our hormones became a passion for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So all of this really got started for me, right around when I saw you initially was actually when I first got off of hormonal birth control. And this is a subject, I've always been interested in health. I studied health, I worked in Western medicine for 6 years in an OR. I've always been interested in health. I've always tried taking care of my body. But I had been on hormonal birth control for 14 years. I was like a lot of girls that you get put on it first thing when you have cramps, you're getting some PMS, you have acne. For me, it was acne.
For me, it was acne too.
Yep. And I was on it for 14 years because I was terrified to get off of it because I knew the second I did, all my acne was going to return. All of these things were going to get bad. And so I just stayed on it for a long time. I finally got to the point, I've done lots of healing over the last 2 years, but I finally got to a point where I just realized and learned what hormonal birth control was doing to my body. And I think this is something a lot of women are realizing right now that we've kind of been lied to.
There's a huge awakening happening.
Yes.
In the age range, I feel like from 25 to 40, especially the 30s right now, a lot of women are waking up to this.
Absolutely. Well, because we're all struggling.
Yeah.
And that was basically what happened to me is that I got off the pill and my body went haywire. So I was breaking out my face, my chest, my back, cystic, painful, acne I've never had before. And I had acne in middle school. Again, that's why I got on the pill. Not only that, I gained probably 20 pounds. My face blew up, was super round. I didn't look like myself. I had horrible brain fog. I was very depressed. I just did not feel like myself at all. And I really decided, okay, we're going to put in the work to do this and to get better. And so that was part of what brought me to see you was I was like, I need help. I need support in this. So I started going to you. I started going to a functional medicine doctor, really trying to get off of all my prescriptions, shift over to natural methods. I also through it was, I guess a year and a half ago, you did that sugar cleanse.
Yes, we did a 14-day sugar detox.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was one of the most impactful things that I did because it really helped me. I was really struggling. I was about 6 months off the pill at that point. I was still really struggling. And that's when it clicked when we did that detox.
Yeah.
It clicked. I was like, there's something that works.
Yeah.
And I realized that I had to live my life in a way that incorporated my hormones, incorporated what was going on with my body. I couldn't just throw in a workout here, a healthy meal here. I had to approach my lifestyle in a way that was healthy for the first time. I'd always been a healthy person. I studied health, did all of that. This was the first time I ever, like, that was kind of the first thing that clicked for me of like, oh, really just eating well and taking care of yourself does so much for your body.
Yeah.
And so kind of that whole process, once we did that, that's when I really started healing. After about a year off the pill, I finally felt like myself again. And I just got really mad. I was like, why did no one tell me this sooner?
I was thinking about this, looking through the book again this morning, and I was like, there had to have been a period of anger for
Yes.
this book to come from. And not in a bad way.
Yeah.
But I was like kind of feeling into like, it is so infuriating as a woman to not be given the education or the tools to like manage your own self and body. And like rightfully so, it is a reason to be angry. So anyways, I was thinking about that. Like there had to have been some anger, and then you clearly channeled it into something.
Yeah, there was a lot of anger because again, I studied this. I was interested in this. I took a women's health class in college. I should have known this information. And the sad thing is I did know we had a hormone cycle, but I had no idea that it was actually relevant or important to me living every single day.
Yes.
That's the piece that has never been taught to us. And even in like school sex ed, they really just teach us about our periods and body changes. And they're like, go off, become a woman. Well, they don't teach you how to support yourself as you're going through that process. They don't teach you to actually pay attention to your hormones, to live in a way that supports your hormones. And as women, our hormones literally are involved in like every single function of our body.
Dictates everything.
Yes. Yeah. So that was really what prompted it. Is I was sitting there and I was like, how can I change this? How can we be better? And actually, the initial idea was for a book for girls a little bit older, because this book is for girls 8 and up, really wanting to get to that foundation. The original idea was for girls a little bit older, kind of because my story was the birth control story.
Right.
But as I thought about it, I realized that we have to get to this foundationally. We have to get girls to understand when they're being taught these things that there's a hormonal component, that there is a cycle that's there to help them, that it's unique to them, and they get to figure that out and discover that for themselves, which can be really beautiful, versus what a lot of women today are struggling with is we were not taught about our hormones at all. And then we finally learn about them after we have struggled with PCOS, endometriosis, infertility, getting off the pill. Every woman has either experienced that herself or knows another woman who has gone through those issues. And that's when our generation is learning about hormones. And by then it's too late. Like that's something I'm struggling with. Like I've got some makeup on today, but like I'm breaking out because I'm about to start my period and I'm healing my body after 14 years of being on that. And I really just want girls to not have to go through the same experience that so many of us have had.
Absolutely. I do think it's a genius idea to tackle the issue right there at the age where the education needs to come in.
Yeah.
Because that's how we create like fundamental change. And then to speak to the women more at our age range, I totally relate to everything you're saying. I've had to go on my own hormone journey. I still have months where my like period cramps are like pretty intense.
Yeah.
Right? You're still battling the inflammation and whatnot. Although now as well, there are more tools in the toolkit and I'm listening. I know when my body's speaking to me.
Yes.
But it's incredible because in my practice in the clinic, it's like every woman age probably like between 25 and 35, I feel like every woman who comes in has a PCOS diagnosis. And
it's so common.
It's so common.
My like friend group of girls, I would say like half of them have it.
Yes. And PCOS used to be this really straightforward thing that was only associated with full-on insulin resistant and obesity. And there were these really obvious signs and symptoms of hair loss or the androgen symptoms gating phase where you shouldn't have it really as a woman. But now PCOS is showing up in women who seemingly look healthy. They're a healthy weight. They're working out. but their hormones are still, backwards or messed up. So,
And every doctor is going to tell them with that PCOS diagnosis, you need to be on the pill.
right. So now another reason to get on the birth control pill. And now you're sort of in this like
Loop.
loop.
Mm-hmm. And you get stuck in that too. It's
mhm.
something that I've even talked about with friends, with my sister, of they've kind of watched my journey and they're like,
Mhm.
okay, how do I actually get off of this though? And women are scared because we've been
Because you're
forced it our
gonna
whole lives.
Mhm.
And yeah, we have to face that responsibility of like, it's our body that's being affected. So they're scared to make that change. And like, rightfully so. I mean,
Mhm.
it's a big change. It impacts everything. So yeah, it absolutely gets us stuck in a cycle.
And then, for a lot of women, there is a time, like if you want to have children, you have to come out of the cycle.
Right.
And the doctors 10 years ago weren't telling women, well, these could be the side effects. This could delay conceiving by a year or so to
Mhm.
get your cycle back. That's being communicated more now, I think so. But it can be, a really rocky ride. And
Yep.
this is when women are like, I think hitting the wall, like, why didn't someone tell me about this
Yep.
a decade ago? I think
Well,
for a
when we
lot of
could-
women, it's their fertility journey.
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. Well, and when we could do something about it,
Mhm.
because then when you're at that point, you're chasing the clock.
Right.
You're like,
And now
okay,
you're
I only
hurt.
have so many years to try to have this kid.
Mhm.
It's too late I mean, sadly, it's too late by then. And thankfully, with modern medicine, we have a lot of options, but it's too late then to like start trying to heal everything and do all of that. If you're like, okay, I have 2 years left to try to have kids, it's going to be a really hard journey, you know?
Yeah. I do think the doctors are feeding into this idea that a lot of this is like not reversible. I think there's this idea that like things like even diabetes, PCOS, endometriosis, like once you're given the diagnosis, like you're given a life sentence.
Yeah.
So I do want to make sure women understand like you can unravel most of those. And I would go as
Absolutely.
far as saying, if not reversible, entirely manageable and symptomatically put at bay.
Hmm.
But I agree, what a travesty to realize in your late 30s that you have all this inflammation, when if we were educating women well, their fertility journey might be a lot easier.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I totally get that. And I completely agree. And even with my journey, I do believe these things are actually healable, if not manageable.
Mhm.
The struggle, I think, is that just the structure of our society and like how our medicine is set up, we want an immediate fix. We just want the symptoms to be fixed.
Yes.
And when I'm talking with women and like moms, that's a lot of the conversation. That's kind of what I'm saying. By that point, it's almost like too late. It's not that we
Yeah.
can't go back and fix those things. It's that our expectations with how we view medicine, how we view health and healing, we want it to be fast. And the truth of this is it's not. Like
It's
I'm
not.
2 years out and I'm still struggling with things. And that's just been something I've had to accept. And especially if you're in that heightened state of wanting a kid and
Where there's
Right.
time sensitive.
Yes,
Yeah.
like that just makes all of that so much harder to go through.
It does. I get this over and over again. Why is being healthy so hard? And
Gosh.
I think everyone can relate to that.
Mhm.
And in some ways, it's like, well, it's pretty simple. Like, eat well, move your body, breathe. But then on the other hand, things like big pharma, big medicine, big chemicals, big sugar, all of this has crept into like every aspect of our life.
Yeah.
So if you truly want to be healthy, the level of intention you have to like live at throughout your day as you're making
Yes.
your choices, every product you put on your face and body, and obviously the obvious things like grab some fruits and veggies. But
Mhm.
there are other ways all of these hormone disruptors
Yes.
are creeping in. And I think part of a health awakening is you start to see like the level of intention you have to be living at
Yep.
to really get a grip on knowing what is like entering the system here.
Yeah. Again, it has to be like
Um,
whole like lifestyle.
Yes.
Not just pick and choose and add these little things here and there.
Even, even like social media, like this has crept in. We're all addicted to our phones. It's staring at screens. So it is hard being healthy because it's a choice to really go against the grain and against the system at this point in time. And it's a challenge.
It is a challenge. And
Mhm.
it's not only a challenge in that it takes extra effort because we have to read the ingredient labels on almost everything we purchase here in the United States, which is very sad,
Yeah.
but it is the truth. And yeah, so not only is it a lot of effort to, with everything that you're purchasing, bringing into your home, and that's a big thing that like I put into the book is it can just feel so overwhelming. Like the mental shift in that, like you're saying, you kind of have to go against the grain. And that was something that was hard for me. Like I studied health. I worked in Western medicine for 6 years.
Right.
And so all of this is very opposite of anything that I had ever been taught.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of the beautiful thing about this hormone journey for me was that this is the first time that I had ever really gotten tapped into my body and really gave myself, because my body wasn't clouded by the pill, I got that inflammation out. We started feeling like myself again. I finally started being able to listen in and tap into my body and be like, what do I need? What is my intuition telling me right now? And that has really made a lot of this a lot less overwhelming, but really like the goal with the book, and there's information on this in there for parents.
I'm going to dive in there next.
Perfect. But yeah, the goal of like adding in those things is like, we can't mitigate for everything, right? Like that's never going to be possible. But if we can just start paying attention and just becoming a little bit more aware, then we get to make choices based off of that. And if we can just make a few more healthy choices over time, so maybe that's okay when your Dawn dish soap runs out, you're getting a non-toxic version the next time.
Yes.
Little choices like that, they add up over time. And that is not only going to help, your families be healthier, but especially if they have daughters. You really want to be checking. All of our hormones are important, but it's just that the women's hormone cycle is so much more complex and can, at least in my experience, is a lot more easily fluctuating and a lot more easily influenced by like environmental factors. And so the more that we can try to just like limit those things to make it easier to care for ourselves is always going to be beneficial. But we have to start in that like little incremental way of just paying attention. And then the rest of it's kind of intuitive. You get to experiment and have fun, which is like the fun part of it, which is really what like I want parents and daughters to focus on. It doesn't have to be this big doom and gloom. We have to cut everything out, but let's just make little steps here and there that feel good.
Yeah. And I think you started to touch on, there's like a fun part to this when you're sort of living in more alignment with what your body needs and wants, and you're being a little more conscious and self-aware. And maybe you do something like, say, like the sugar detox, and you have like the big aha moments and things click. And once you've seen it or felt it, you can't unsee it.
Right.
And that's where it starts to get fun and your healing journey becomes exciting.
And that's also where you remain consistent.
And yes,
I really struggle with consistency. It's not a strong suit of mine.
Me too.
But after like doing that detox, because there were such drastic effects, I was like, this is worth putting in the effort to keep doing versus all these diets and all these things. That felt really good to me. I had such drastic benefits that it was worth continuing to do.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing is that we all get to figure that out. We all get to try things and be like, ooh, I really like that. Let me try that. Oh, we don't like that. We're not doing that again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So whether it's sugar, I just did 5 months, no alcohol.
Nice.
And you come back to it and you have like a new sensitivity and you're like, or like, okay, that was fine for a special night, but you remember why you cut that out.
Yep.
And there's this new sensitivity and you're listening more, your body trusts you more, so it will speak to you maybe more gently instead of like screaming.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, that self-trust is huge.
Yeah, I think it's a question I've asked myself, like, can my body trust me? That's a big one.
Yeah.
And it's not about being perfect, but there's a relationship, like there's an intelligence here. And it's like, can it trust you?
Absolutely.
That's a big one.
Yeah. Well, it's something that my healing journey, honestly, that is why this is so important. This information is vital for girls because I was not connected to my body at all for the majority of my life. And I did not trust myself. I'm still learning how to. I still have very frequent moments, especially publishing a book, starting a business.
Oh, yeah.
I have very frequent moments of not trusting myself. And I'm honestly, I'm learning all of this at like 30. I'm learning how to work with my body in the way that it wants to live, that works well for me.
Me too. I'm 7. So, I mean, you're doing great. But this is so many women. And yeah,
That's why we have to start
that's why we have to
early so
start
these
early.
girls can do that sooner so they can spend their childhood
Mhm.
figuring themselves out, learning how to trust themselves with that support of their caregivers around before they're then adults and they have to figure it out all by themselves. And then they have to
Absolutely.
pay for people to help them. We can do more like earlier on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now I want to dive into that. Let's get into the book. Been there, done that. And I love it. It's almost like, well, it's definitely more substantial than a magazine, but it's a very approachable book. And this is, what would you say, like the age range it was written for?
Yeah. So the book was written for girls about 8 to 12.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people might be thinking 8 is really young to start having these conversations, but girls are starting their periods younger and younger. Like there's reports of girls starting their periods at 6 and 7 years old, which is awful, but it's because of all the stuff in our products and our food.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a responsibility to be teaching these girls, because if we're not teaching them early on, then those girls who do start earlier, they're missing out. I was one of those girls. I started all of this really early, and you can probably tell from some of the things in the book because there's a lot of personal experiences in there for me.
Yes.
But I was one of the first girls to develop. I started my period at 10, which for back then was very early.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't tell, other than my mom, I didn't tell anybody for like years. Like I hid everything. It was very shameful, very secretive, because I was before everybody else and I didn't have any of that information.
Very alone in it.
Absolutely. And so that really is like the heart of this is I don't want girls to feel that alone or that shame that I did as I was going through these things, because they don't have to.
Absolutely.
We can give them better support.
We can do better for sure. So I feel like it cracks me up because I think, say you're a mom, like getting ready to give this to your daughter. I feel like any grown woman who read this would probably benefit as well.
Yes.
So honestly, it is so well designed for, younger girls or teens, but there's so much information here. This is like an excellent refresher for any woman or gentleman or man who has a woman in their life or daughter they're educating.
Yes, big point there. Men, this is also your responsibility. This is not just on the women in your life.
Uncles, dads, brothers, mentors, coaches. You guys need to know this too and be prepared.
So that you can better support those women, those girls in your life.
Yes. So I feel like this is an excellent book for men to have on hand. But I love it because it's a sex ed book, but it's so much more than that. And it's beautifully designed. And it is... there are drawings and cartoons in here, and it is sort of cartoon-like, and the drawings are almost a little bit childlike in nature. That way, when we're looking at the body and the organs, I feel like it's super approachable and appropriate for a young girl.
That was the intention. Because, again, I developed early, so I was uncomfortable with a lot of those things. And also, too, just as people, we all have different capacities, especially for this kind of information. Like, kids develop at all different ages, not just physically, but also mentally, and, like, what they're interested in learning about. And if they're not interested in this, they're not going to listen to it. They have to be ready to take in this information. And that was really the intention behind designing it more kind of like a magazine and having these illustrations that keep it very fun and very youthful, is that they could go to any part of the book. And if that one little pop-up is all that they feel like they want to read or feel safe for them, great. That's all they have to read. They can come back and look at the rest later.
Yeah, you can literally open it to any page and kind of,
yes,
gain some information. You don't have to read it front to back.
Yeah.
So as a parent too, like, oh my gosh, she wants to shave her legs. Like there's a whole section here on body hairs. So you can just go to that section and maybe use that to help you in your conversation or refer your daughter to it, or she can turn to it.
Yes. The goal is with this book, and I think the ideal way, and obviously as caregivers, as parents, everybody, again, has different capacities. But back in the 90s, for me, this book was the American Girl book, The Care and Keeping of You. And while that book for back then was great, it was very vague. It has a lot of negative language in it. And I know for a lot of my friends, that was a book that was kind of just thrown at them. Like, here you go, learn it.
Yeah, you didn't like sit with your mom and dad and like,
Right. And
yeah,
some
which is
of my
fine.
friends did,
Yeah.
but a lot of them that wasn't the case. And this was back in the 90s. Like, no one really cared about any
Yeah.
of this back then. But really, the intention behind this and to get the most out of it, I think that it's best to at least sit down with your daughter and kind of have a general conversation of this, flip through the book together, even if they're not quite ready, just like really letting them know, establishing that this is a safe space, that this is where we want you to come to when you do have questions about this, when you are ready to talk about this, really just establishing that foundation as a safe space so that once they're ready, they're coming and talking to you. I think that's just like the biggest thing. You know, we don't want them looking elsewhere. We don't want them just having a book in their corner and, again, being alone, reading that and not having anybody to talk to
Or
about
getting
it.
the information from Sally's older sister who's
Yes,
like
or
15.
online.
Or online.
That
Oh
we
my
don't know
gosh.
where that source is coming from.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, this is the goal of this is for it to be a bonding experience, for this to actually bring parents and their daughters closer through this information. And then also, I think most parents want their daughters to come to them as they get older and the conversations get a little tougher when things like sex are introduced. If you're not starting this early, by that point, if they don't feel like you're a safe person to talk to, they are not going to come and talk to you about sex. Like, that's just the nature of
Yeah.
people. It has to be a safe space. So we want to start that really early.
Yeah, this is an excellent tool to sort of bridge the gap between you and your child. And this can help you set the foundation of good, open, safe communication.
Yes.
So I want to dive into like my favorite
Yeah.
part of this book and what you did here. And so Baily broke down, there's traditionally we think of like 4 phases of the menstrual cycle.
Yep.
And she kind of assigned each phase like a character and brought personality to each phase. And I think if there's anything we've really gotten wrong as women, we are educated and the way we learn, it's all about like linear analytical thinking, but we are so cyclical by nature.
Yeah.
And the way you've sort of brought this to life is such a nice way for a young girl to understand her cycles and that she's going to be a little different throughout the cycle.
Yeah.
And then how to use each phase of the cycle to her advantage.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it brings a smile I crack up every time I see it, like the classic hormone chart.
Yeah.
I remember seeing this as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, what the hell? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a bunch of squiggles.
Well, that's everyone just kind of showed us, okay, here's what your hormones are doing, and there's ovulation, and then they send you off.
Yeah. And you're like, all these lines are doing different things at different
Right.
times. And that's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Anyways, so what you've done is given each phase like a personality and a season. Like the menstrual phase is inner winter, follicular inner spring, ovulation summer, and then we have luteal fall. And you've given them all sort of personalities. We have Tammy testosterone, Fiona FSH, Ellie estrogen, Polly progesterone.
Mhm.
So a young woman can, progesterone in your science book means like nothing to you. Like you're
Right.
learning what this little molecule does.
Yeah.
How does that translate to like what's happening in my daily life?
Yep.
And so I love that you've brought characters and personalities in to personify our hormones. That way a young woman can really understand what's happening and feel into like, ooh, I've got a lot of energy this week, but I don't in my premenstrual phase. And that's normal.
Yeah.
And then you have a better sense of, okay, what's normal, what's not normal. And you go into the book, when should there be concern? But I thought that was a genius part of the book. And
Thank you.
the characters are really fun.
Yes, they're so cute.
Yeah.
She did a great job with them, my illustrator. But
how did you come up with, was that just kind of like an idea that came to you to bring these characters in?
yeah, so one of the skill sets that I'm like most appreciative of my time in Western medicine. So I was a cardiac device sales rep. So I was in the OR all day treating people that were very sick. I was pushing buttons every day that could like kill the person on the table. And I kind of saw just through that whole experience how reactive and not proactive our like medicine is in the US. And so with that experience, one of the biggest skill sets that I gained from it was taking really complex information and having to, I don't want to say dumb it down, but having to tailor it to whatever audience you're talking to. Because a lot of the patients in cardiac care, they're elderly patients. So, and we're explaining very complex things to them. So you have to do it in a way. I think education is really important. When you're getting healthcare, you should understand what's going on. If you don't, maybe we need to ask more questions before we allow a doctor to do something. And so that really, I think, is what allowed me. I kind of sat there and was like, okay, how do we take all these really complex, these big words that to a 10-year-old aren't going to mean anything, probably to their parents aren't going to mean anything. How do we do this in a way that really my goals for them were to make these characters their own? So these hormone friends, because the whole experience of me healing my hormones was getting in touch with my body. Once I started tracking my cycle and just paying attention to those little like clicks of information that your body gives you at different times throughout the cycle, once you're tracking, you can actually correlate that and say, like, just like you were saying, oh, I'm feeling more social. Oh, I'm feeling more down. Where am I at in my cycle? Ah, that makes sense. And as you do that, you kind of gather more information, but that's also, as you gather that information, you get to make these character friends your own. And so that was really the goal. I wanted to keep this fun. I wanted to make it something that's not daunting. It's not all this information that you have to learn. These are new friends that get to accompany you through the rest of your life, and they get to be the friends that you want them to be. So LE estrogen, polyprogesterone, also TAMI testosterone, our LH and FSH friends. Those are our summer camp friends. They just come in for like a day or two and then they leave.
In and out.
Yeah, in and out. And that's kind of, it correlates with the seasons, right? Like all of this was very intentional and I wanted to make it just really fun and really give girls the permission to like make this their own because it is their own body. And honestly, if all they get from that hormone section is to just understand that our hormones come from our food and from our hormone cycle functioning how it's supposed to. That's really, and it's more complex than that, obviously, but those are really the two big places.
Sure.
So if we're checking, eating healthy the majority of the time, and we're tracking our cycles and just paying attention to our bodies, they are going to be set up for so much more success than women today really ever had the chance to be.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. For each phase, it includes like what you should expect to see in your undies.
Yep.
Yep. Not shying away from these things like discharge.
Yeah.
What's normal and not normal. Feelings, physical sensations, foods to fuel you, how to move during that particular phase of the cycle. So you're getting giving them so much good information. Let me see. Let me come back here. I just want people to know that within the book, it's so like all encompassing, whether it's like body hair, body odor, lovely diagrams, being comfortable with how your anatomy might be different, addressing different boob sizes and vulva presentations, like all of these things. All of the things that probably as a parent are the most like intimidating or uncomfortable, like this book can like bridge the gap.
That really was a big intention behind it. And really, this book is basically all the things I wish somebody had told me that they never did. But it does. A lot of the things in this book are the things that are kind of unspoken or the things that as women, we don't speak about until we get older and we're now comfortable to talk about it. Now that we've realized everybody's on the same, having the same experience, now we want to talk about it. But we don't do that until we finally get older and a lot more comfortable. And it's just a disservice, I think, to everyone involved to not be having these conversations sooner.
Absolutely. And this book just like makes it more comfortable.
Good. That was the goal.
It really does. Yes. So as a parent, I feel like you'll have this in your like toolkit and be like, thank God.
I hope so.
Yes. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about, I don't know. So you've got the book and your wish going forward as to how this I would say endeavor or movement of yours, like what's next for the book? Where do you want to see the book? And then maybe just end on like a personal anecdote of like becoming like a creator and author, just what it's been like to rapidly sort of change your life, just for anyone else who's like trying to find some inspiration for their passion project. But I know there's way more to this than the book. This is like the jumping off point. And I know Baily's working on these other projects to create like an online curriculum this would be amazing to see in like classrooms. So I just want to hear a little bit about the bigger vision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, the book really, it was the launching point. I was trying to figure out, how do we make this information as accessible to everyone while I'm trying to get this information to schools? So that really is the main goal. So with Heart and Flow, which is my company that I started earlier this year, we're working right now. I've partnered with a tech company here in Austin called Logic Tree, and we are working to build out a curriculum that is based off of the book, but we're going to go a lot more in depth. There's, going to be interactive elements, all of that. We are going to start with the private school and homeschool systems, just because hurdle-wise, they're easier to get into. That's where we can collect data. And then we're going to take that and work with the government and try to get this information into schools, because hormone education for both boys and girls, it needs to be included in school sex ed.
Yeah.
It's vital information for them to have. And we're really doing a disservice to kids by not getting them this information. So that really is the end goal. So Logic Tree is helping me build out this curriculum. We're going to try and get that into schools, and then also eventually turn that into an app, because that's the other thing, is that, as a lot of women probably know, there's not really a cycle tracking app for girls of this age.
Yeah, I thought this was genius on your part when I heard about this idea. So many adult women are tracking their cycles, but what a great thing to do as a young woman. But the apps aren't really appropriate.
No, you open it up and it has a million pop-ups coming at you, which first off is extremely overwhelming and very annoying. Like, as a woman, it's annoying. But as a 12-year-old girl, I would be so overwhelmed by that. And also the questions are, did you have sex today? How's your libido today?
Right.
That's not relevant for girls of that age, and they deserve to have information that's catered to them.
Yeah, I love the idea of an app for them that is appropriate, safe, very simple and uncomplicated for that age.
Well, the goal, and we'll do this with both the curriculum and the app, but is that the parents would have a login as well. And so they can kind of see, like, the school curriculum, here's all the information your daughters are learning today. Here's some follow-up questions you can ask them at home. Here's some activities that y'all can do to better support her. Again, trying to make that a bonding experience. Same thing with the app. Parents, they'll have their side of it, where it's like, here's the information your daughters have access to. Here's education for parents on how to talk to your daughters about these things. Those sorts of things that, again, we want it to be a bonding experience. We never want to cross over the girl's boundaries and make her uncomfortable. We really want to make sure that she understands that she's in control of this process, and that this is her information, it's her body, but that her caregivers are there to support her. So yeah, these are all the big things. Really trying to get it into schools, get an app, and then I would love to eventually have versions of this book that are in other languages, so that we can really get this out further than just the US, and even if it's a shorter, more condensed version, to get it to low income areas, various countries. Really the goal is just to get this information to as many girls as possible.
Yeah, I love that. And you can tell a lot of thought has gone into the child, parent, or caretaker, or father, or mother, mentor plays a role.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Thank you. Yeah. But yeah, I know the other question that you asked was just kind of being on this journey, starting something new.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of courage, new career, and it's risk-taking and doing something creative that something you've never done before.
Yeah.
I'm always impressed when someone comes out with a product. That is a whole other, to have a tangible product that has to be made is a whole other layer to a business. So yeah, tell me a little bit about just how you've been doing through it all.
Yeah. So honestly, if you're somebody who is looking, you know that you don't like what you're doing right now, but you don't exactly know what it is you want to do or what to do next. Because that's where I felt like I was for a few years.
Yeah.
Because the pandemic hit, I was up in New York, I was in medical devices. And finally, my life slowed down enough where I realized I was not happy with what I was doing, but I had no idea how to get out of it or what to do from there.
Yeah.
And I would say, honestly, the first thing has been life-changing for me is getting into therapy, helping myself, helping me find myself more, helping me work through those things that honestly, and maybe this is just my personal experience, but I think when you're trying to do something new, this truly, and especially pushing the status quo, going away from what everyone else tells you to do.
Yeah.
it has been the most emotionally and mentally up and down time of my life. This last year has been a lot. Like, I feel like every time I come into you for acupuncture, I'm like, okay, well, Amanda, last week was great, but this one is not. Like,
I mean, there's probably a few things, but not many things are harder in the world than starting a business. Creating something from nothing is like a real challenge, and to get that momentum going and
yeah,
the highs and lows and the mistakes you make, and it's a massive challenge.
absolutely. And so I don't think that and I'm also a little woo-woo, I'm very spiritual.
Love that. We love that.
I don't think that I would have done all of this as drastically as I have, because truly, like, yes, this process all started 2 years ago when I got off the pill, but I had the idea for the book last April.
Right.
So
I don't think we really emphasize like in really like a year
it truly has been a
it
year
came
because the book
together.
came out.
Like
Yeah.
1 year is when
Mhm.
this really started.
And so I basically have changed my entire life in the last year.
Yeah.
And I can go into some detail on that. But I don't think that, first off, the idea would have even come in, or that actually putting any of this into the world and taking action on it would have been possible had I not gone through those years of therapy and done that work on myself. It basically freed all the things that were blocking me from, like, not only finding my path, but also being brave enough to do it.
Yeah.
And so that would be like the one thing I would recommend, is that if you understand that, like, you're not happy with where you're at, but you don't know where to go, just start trying new things and get support, get somebody to talk to, because until you create space for that idea, for that thing to come in, it's going to be really hard to force it. And that was one of the beautiful things about this process. And I've been so fortunate and so blessed. But literally the week that I had the idea for the book, I saw you, I told you about it, and you're like, wait, you need to meet this publisher. So she introduced me to Kira, my publisher at JOA Publishing. And I had one meeting with Kira and was like, okay, now I'm going on her retreat, went on Kira's retreat, went into it thinking there's no way that we're just going to go on this and see how it goes. There's no way that I'm going to like pay to publish and do all these things. And then I left the retreat and was like, well, of course there's no one else I would publish with. So I have to do this now. And I feel like every step of the way, because I had created that space,
Yeah.
and I was willing to kind of let the opportunities come to me, and I was willing to just kind of sit back and, like, I took little action, but I was willing to kind of sit back and let things come in. That has continued to happen over this last year. Creating that space has allowed things to come in that I never would have imagined. And also just through that process, and I think probably the biggest, like, happy coincidence of all of this is like doing this hormone work and just getting in touch with my body, learning to trust myself. It's completely changed my life, not just in, oh, I left my corporate job and I've published a book and all these surface level things, but I've stopped drinking. I stopped drinking a year ago. I am much more selective. I'm also basically celibate now because
I get it.
I'm a lot more selective of, like, who I'm sharing my body with, who I'm being
Absolutely.
intimate with, because I'm putting work into it.
A more profound understanding of
Yes.
what this temple deserves and what you're willing to exchange energy with.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and I'm putting consistent effort into my body. And yeah, just that relationship to myself is so much different. And I hold myself in a higher regard, honestly, because I've done that work.
Absolutely. More, self-respect, self-confidence, more trust, going back and forth with the body and the mind.
And so that's why this work is so important. And especially, like, parents, these are the things you want your daughters doing, right? We don't want them abusing substances. We don't want them
being reckless with themselves.
Yes, like,
and
making bad choices. And sadly, you can tell people all day, every day, don't do this, don't do this. Well, until we feel it for ourselves, it's really hard people have to figure those things out for themselves. And so starting these things early, the goal is that girls get autonomy and empowerment early on so they can advocate for themselves better as they get older. This is like something I've been going through in the last like 2 weeks, so it's like very new for me. But again, all of this, it's a healing process. It's a self-learning process, and entrepreneurship, I think, just kind of like speeds all of that up, because you can't ignore it. It's like really in your face. And something that just to be really honest and transparent, something that I've like really been struggling with is just like consistency and like taking care of myself like behind the scenes, because
Yeah.
I'm putting so much more of my energy into like work and doing all these other things. And kind of by doing that, like I removed all the external structure from my life. And kind of by doing that, I've realized that I don't really know how to like take action or motivate myself without forcing it, without doing it in a way that is led by shame or guilt.
Yeah.
And now that I'm so aware, I refuse to do that to myself anymore. And I'm kind of finding myself in these like burnout episodes where I can't, my body's like, we're not forcing it anymore. But we also don't really know how to like do this in a healthy way either.
Yeah. So I've been ruminating on something similar,
Mm-hmm.
and it came to me a different way. But I understand also, as like a business owner, you have to be pretty self-motivating, and there's no like external discipline or structure coming
Yeah.
through, and that's very challenging.
Yes.
Um and sometimes, yeah, you're being motivated because you feel guilt or shame, like I got nothing done yesterday. I said I was going to do
Mm-hmm.
this on my to-do list, and you're like willing it all to happen, which is a very masculine way of
Yes.
operating.
Yes.
But I was listening to this podcast and was really talking about shifting from this mindset from life is happening to you, not even that life is happening for you, but that like life is happening through you.
Mm.
And they said this beautiful thing that life is the dancer and you are the dance. Like it's coming
Through
through
it.
you.
Yep.
And I
I love
love
that.
that so much. It made me this morning wake up and be like, ooh, what's life gonna like bring through me
I
today?
love that.
And I kept like really like saying it over and letting it sink in. And I think when you give yourself the space, you'll like feel more of that like movement through you, like the inspired action, not the
Yes.
like, oh my God, my to-do list. Oh my God,
Yes.
my to-do list from a week ago, I'm still working on. And it's more like, ooh, something's coming through. I'm excited to
Mm-hmm.
get to the computer. And I don't quite have it figured out yet.
Well, it's,
But
we're
I
not,
think you're onto something with like just the space.
yeah. And well, the thing is we're having to learn how to do this, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
society wants us to like fit into a box and do things a certain way. And it is external pressure. We're told you have to get good grades in school or your parents are going to be upset, your teachers are going to be upset. The motivation doesn't come from us, from like most of
It's
the
all
things growing
external
up.
motivators.
Yes. And so
Absolutely.
when you're trying to be in that flow state and do things where that creation is coming through you and it's not willed,
Mm-hmm.
when you've never been taught how to do that, it's hard. You have
It's
to
very
learn.
hard. And
Yeah.
it's like so abstract and intangible, which makes it even harder to learn. But it
Yeah.
is honestly still like a muscle that just needs to learn how to be flexed.
For sure. Like I am still very much going through the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. And I think that's going to continue. And it's
And then it
still,
gets easier.
for sure. And honestly, for me, it still is so much better than what I was doing before.
Absolutely.
And I'm still, even though it's a lot harder, it's a different hard. It's not that, oh, I'm stuck and miserable hard. It's, oh, wow, there's all this opportunity. I'm stepping into this new life I've created for myself, but this requires more work. This requires more of me. This requires me to do the work on myself. It's hard in a different way. But yeah, it's a process.
I'm glad you spoke to that challenge because I immediately related to it. And I'm sure many people, whether you're a business owner or not, can relate to like, how do I find the internal motivation? But I think a little bit of a mindset shift helps,
Mm-hmm.
and then creating the space.
Yeah. Well,
And then, well, I was just going to say, I think you realize like, oh, like, wow, I did this on a Monday and really hit my stride. And you might learn like, I'm the most productive between like, noon and 4 p.m. on a Monday.
yeah.
Or, oh, you know what? I didn't go out Friday night and I spent all Friday night doing this. Maybe you're like most creative nighttime.
Yeah.
And when you give yourself space to like play, you'll find you'll find how that inspiration comes most easily to you.
Yes, the play's a big thing. That's something for me that when I get stuck in that, I keep trying to just like find the joy, chase the joy. What excites me, what lights me up, that is usually where we need to go. So,
Well, I'm excited for you and for this book. And that's such a big takeaway. Creating space to like check in with yourself, heal, identify blocks, and whether that's like weekly therapy or a personal development workshop. Maybe it's just like a day-long workshop. Maybe you can do a 3-day workshop. Maybe you can go on a yoga or meditation retreat. I mean,
You can even just get outside.
or you can just,
Shockingly, just
like,
sitting in nature with
yes.
no phone, nothing to do, and just sitting out there for like an hour, like no people, no noise, anything. It will really slow down time for
Yes,
you.
these
Like,
non-negotiable hours
yep,
where there's nothing in your ear and you're not around your family or coworkers. That's usually when, the creativity comes in or the wheels start flowing
yes.
or the aha moments happen.
Because we're creating that space. We're
The
slowing
space.
down, getting away from all the distractions, and really creating space, but being present in the space too.
I just want to say I'm like so inspired.
Oh,
And I do think this is like an incredible jumping off point for the rest of your vision. But I can't emphasize enough what a great book this is and what a great job Baily did. Been there, done that. All parents, mentors, teachers, coaches, all of you should go out and get it. And where can people stay more in touch with you? If there's a website,
yeah, absolutely. So, website is heartandflow.co. And we have an Instagram. I mean, if you search Heart and Flow, you'll find us on Instagram, you'll find us on TikTok. Those are going to be the two big places. We also have a Facebook group for parents
Mhm.
and caregivers that, provides information for them, newsletters, things like that. So, those are going to be the big places that you can stay in touch with what we're doing. And yeah, just follow us along this journey.
And then can they buy the book there?
So the book, yes, there's a link to the book on the website, but also the book is sold through Amazon, so you can find it
Nice.
there as well.
Awesome. I
Yeah.
love it. Well, thank you so much, Baily.
Yes,
We'll
thank
have
you
to
for
have you
having
back
me.
on. Take care.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone.